Oh, I got a new song. Wait till we get it uploaded. Not gonna rock it today, but woo, it's good stuff. Maybe I'll give you a little sneak peek. All right, let's get this party started. All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. I also have to bust your chops if you are not a member of Locals to sign up right there, peoplespundit.locals.com, because we are having a blast on the book club, Nations and Identities. It's like every week, that's what we're reading this week. We've read so much. We've read Bernard Bailyn, which was one of my personal favorite times during the book club, The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. We read Tragedy of Great Power Politics by John Mearsheimer, which is absolutely huge when you consider discussing what's going on in Eastern Europe. And we've read, which I think is particularly interesting for Americans to understand and read, Jack Snyder's Myths of Empire. All right, both Mearsheimer and Snyder are realists. Snyder is more of a defensive realist, not more of. He is in the line, and he was trying to do something different, which is to not be a normal realist and explain the impact of factions or parochial interests coming together and working to impact policy. And of course, that's domestic. And they sell these things that he calls, title of the book, myths, to the public in order to justify their interventions and overexpansions, which they do. And unfortunately, when you have something like the Blob or USAID, which I'm going to play a clip that's relevant to, all right, it is very difficult to course correct, all right? And I think this is his contribution to the great body of work. It is incredibly difficult for a nation to course correct when they are on the verge of overexpansion and collapse, because you have these parochial interests, and that come together, they band together, and they create these like essentially blob interest groups, like the military industrial complex, the administrative state, the intelligence community, the media, who are part of, right? They have security clearances. So the media thinks they're valuable to come on, and they get lucrative contributor contracts, right? They play musical chairs with different positions, from the media to different positions in the government, right? And then, of course, their preferred vehicle at the moment, which is the Democratic Party, to exert power. These are all little different interests. They have these parochial interests. They come together and create these factions, and together these factions have a lot of power. And when you try to reform or you try to course correct, like somebody like a Donald Trump comes around and says, look, you can't do this or you're going to collapse. You have to change direction. It's very difficult. And unfortunately, and this is why it was so important for us to read this in the book club. I mean, Inside the Numbers is the name of the show, folks. We are a myth-believing society. We don't like to discuss things in terms of realism, all right? Even though realism is the dominant school of thought and it's funny because Democrats usually care about the academics, right? But they don't care when it comes to foreign policy. They are the dominant school of thought in foreign policy studies, in international relations, security studies, whatever you want to call it. And the rest of them are just kind of tinkering around the edges. But realists are widely recognized as those who better understand the world, and it really is, or better understand their theories, understand how to describe or understand how nations behave and why. And then, of course, if you cared about that and you wanted to be a good statecraft person, right? You wanted to be your own Otto van Bismarck, right? You would care who is right and who is wrong. And in this country, unfortunately, we don't like to look at terms of realism. We're idealistic at our core, which is good. But when it comes to foreign policy, it's not. So our leaders couch this crap because they don't give a shit about the people in Ukraine. They don't care about any of that. That's all a load of crap. They inject moralism into it. It's about money. It's about money laundering. It's about gun running, and it's about power. And that's it. And they themselves speak privately, and when you're not listening, in terms of power, and they care about realpolitik. They don't care about the democratic peace theory and this and that. It's a load of horse. You know what? It is a way for them to justify the status quo, to fund money through places like USAID so they can then launder it through various organizations, and it ends up in the pockets of their friends and those who are their friends abroad. It's a scam, but these interests are strong. And that's what we're seeing today. So it is relevant for you to join this stuff and learn this stuff, because if you did and you were in book club with us and you read Myths of Empire, you would understand this USAID thing through a much more complicated and sophisticated lens. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. So when you see this crap like you see today with Rick Wilson and others, that is the interest lashing out. And unfortunately, the people like the Rick Wilsons and the Clintons and the Blob, and they killed the Japanese Empire. Okay, they killed the German state as an effective, independent, autonomous, great power. They kill empires because they are leeches who don't care about the national interests. They don't produce anything. They take. They're takers, and they want to get rich, and they want to get powerful. They act and speak and pretend like they are more virtuous and in general just better people than you, when they are in fact the biggest scum of the earth. In fact, even worse, they have been, through the annals of history, the biggest scum in the history of human civilization. They are literally responsible for more deaths and casting out of more human souls from their physical body than any other group or kind of class of people to ever walk the earth. They are the walking, talking evil that the human race creates. And you'd get that if you were a member of Locals. Peoplesmoney.locals.com. All right, look. We got a lot to talk about today, and we don't have much time to talk about it. Last week, Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports and I were conducting a little live joint streaming live session during the president's speech to the joint session of Congress, which, by the way, was an absolute knockout, which I'm a little bit surprised it was. I thought he had to go further, but at the end of the day, I think what happened is this. Like I told John Solomon, Democrats behaved so poorly that I believe that what happened here is that they saved Trump from not going as far as Trump really needed to go in order to get his message out. Right? Everything I just talked about, et cetera, et cetera. His approval rating is absolutely coming down. It is not coming down where they have it. Other pollsters have it, which we're going to talk about. That's the whole point of the show today. But it is coming down. Democrats, however, are so much worse that they are making Trump, they're covering for Trump's mistakes. Okay, that's just true. All right. I have started now for weeks and weeks, privately and publicly, criticizing the people around Donald Trump. They don't really understand the coalition that voted for him, even those who worked on his campaign. I don't really care. I'm not here to make friends. I don't give a shit if those two, who apparently, if you get on their bad side, you're whatever. I don't care. I'm not here to be your buddy. I'm here to tell the people what is the deal. All right. So they don't really get the coalition. They don't. And not even the pollster they hired, he doesn't really understand them. Right. So the president doesn't have anybody around him telling him what the White House is doing wrong, what message the White House is getting out that is incorrect or insufficient, right? Because there's nothing really incorrect about it. It's just insufficient. He could be doing so much better And he could have held that high, that honeymoon high. He could have held that for a much longer time. But he is starting to do what he did in the first term, and it's not even his fault. It's the fact that it is difficult to be a president and care about this stuff. You are president. It is very hard. You have to do a lot of crap. It's even harder when you're a Republican. It's even harder still when you are Donald Trump. All right. Why? Because they're constantly coming for you, and the media is constantly publishing bogus polls. And that's really where I want to go with this. All right. Because all of this matters. Why does it matter? Because we can't accurately understand how the American public is feeling about what our leaders are doing if we don't have accurate polling. It is hugely, hugely important. It's not just about predicting elections. However, the election is the end all be all. How accurate, or if you're accurate at all, during an election or on an election, is the only gauge a pollster has to tell people that he or she knows what they are doing. You understand? They could poll all year long, all off cycle, tell you what people think about gun control, tell you what people think about Trump's tariffs, tell you what people think about Doge, tell you what people think about Elon Musk, tell you what people think about JD Vance, tell what people think about the interaction with Zelensky and Trump in the White House, all of that. And they can publish their stupid little headlines and they can make their stupid little narratives. But if that pollster cannot predict an election come election day, then everything that pollster wrote and was a source of those headlines is bullshit. Total and utter bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. It means you just got duped by believing these stupid headlines that were sourced by a pollster who can't do his or her job. The polling industry is beginning to now start to collapse on itself a bit. And in response to this, because they knew it was going to come, they're doing something that could really be called consolidation. All right. They are rallying behind a few that are going to be left. And no matter how bad their track record is, they will act as if they are credible. They will act as if they are competent. And still, even after everything that has happened, they will act as if they are superior. They are an authority. However, it's going to be harder to do that with the run of events that has happened. Number one, because we have to go back. One of, if not their favorite pollster, was caught red-handed doing dubious crap and has now been humiliated and will not ever conduct the Des Moines Register poll again. Of course, I am talking about Ann Seltzer. That was a major blow to them because Ann Seltzer was the standard bearer for legacy media pollsters. The old school, and it's ironic, she's a woman, boys club, live caller, high quality, gold standard pollster. When I have been telling you for years that Ann Seltzer something cracked in her brain, and Ann Seltzer is not really a good pollster anymore at all. It doesn't matter how well they've performed in the past. Once they allow that in, I don't want to use that term, but it is a poison. And once a pollster lets that poison in, their work is done. It is tainted. It's garbage. It's sick. It's poisoned along with the pollster that is conducting it. And I'm not going to go back and revisit it all, but the fact of the matter is Ann Seltzer's been hurting to our polling since at least 2020. She's been narrative polling since at least 2020. She withheld a poll that showed Biden was getting absolutely trounced by nearly 20 points in Iowa when Biden was still in the race and before that the powers that be that are her friends could push him out. Why did she do that? She did it so she could later use it as a weapon when they did try to push him out, which is what she did. And of course, we now know famously that she had Kamala Harris up over Donald Trump in the state of Iowa, which he won by more than 13 points. Absolutely ludicrous. She's finished, she's disgraced, and she's humiliated. And she took a huge chunk of what little credibility the media had left in this space, the election consortium, with her. Then we move forward. And like I said, Mark Mitchell and I, for instance, on Tuesday, we're streaming together and we're watching and commenting live on the president's address to a joint session of Congress. During that, we get the news that ABC, as part of a restructuring, is shuttering the doors at 538. 538, of course, was already being run by a second-hand man, G. Elliott Morris, because their first-hand man who started the website, Nate Silver, was fired. We know that he's been held up as this fake data guru. He is not. He is a failed sports handicapper who then blogged under a pseudonym, who pretended like he had a model when it was just David Plouffe giving him his polling data and promising that it would be more accurate than the media and the right-wing pollsters who were putting out opposition stuff, saying that the '08 race was much closer than it was, and it wasn't. P.S. Roman, my 5-year-old, Roro, could have predicted that Barack Obama was going to trounce John McCain. It wasn't exactly a guru, some kind of magic move. Guru move. Anyway, the guy had been bleeding $6 million after going from the weird blog under a pseudonym platform to then being rewarded for it, because of course David Plouffe is going to go to George Stephanopoulos at ABC because they're all again incestuous, and he's gonna say, George, you run the show, because George does. You run the show, do something, get this guy a reward. In the end, he kind of like hop skip from the New York Times over to ABC, but he ends up under the umbrella company of Disney, and he gets a website on ABC News 538 where he has his model and it is proprietary. When he is fired because he's lost $6 to $8 million a year with his failed predictions that never come true, and that includes, by the way, even election cycles where Democrats did well. I mean, folks, this is American politics. A broken clock is right twice a day. So if you always predict Democrats are going to win, eventually you will be right. If you always predict Republicans are going to win, eventually you will be right. But even when he did predict Democrats were going to win, like he did every single year, he favored them. His odds did. He always overestimated those odds, and he always missed races where he predicted the Democrat would win, but the Republican did. Go find me one where Nate Silver predicted the Republican would win, but the Democrat did. I dare you, go. Go. You won't find one. It doesn't exist. Not one. So he's losing $6 to $8 million because they're paying for Nate Silver to give them a bullshit narrative every year. That's what he gets for that product, while he lives it up, feeds Fifi, and drinks 4 lattes a day while his hair falls out. Right? Like, he's making bank, but the website doesn't make jack shit. But it doesn't matter because, like I said, they're paying him for a narrative, but it can't last forever. It can't sustain forever because, unfortunately, through all this pain in the ass guy named Rich, who everyone calls the People's Pundit, has kind of like rose a little bit with his star because he's right when all these other guys aren't. And this pain in the ass is a real loudmouth. And man, he is telling the entire world what an entire scam this election consortium is. And nobody would really care or listen to him if he wasn't freaking right so much more than us. And not only that, but so close. Let's smear him. It doesn't work. Others are like, you know what? I kind of like this guy's style. And you start to see like little pop-ups of aspiring people's pundits over the years. Okay. And that's cool and that's fine. But you start to see me get a little bit of help. So when I jump on Ann Seltzer and I say, you know what, the excuse for her to spike that Democratic caucus poll in 2020 is not a legitimate excuse. Other pollsters are forced to agree with me because I have little like cheerleaders who want to do it too. And now they are. Several of them are doing it now. They are providing their own data, and they are more accurate than those guys. And the voice is getting louder. Even people like Patrick Murray over at Monmouth Poll have to come out and say the People's Pundit is right. Something's wrong here. Ann is doing something weird. It's not kosher. And it just keeps snowballing. We know what happened in 2020. Man, that was much closer than they thought, or as they said. Nate gets fired. G. Elliott Morris goes to 538, which is a major problem. The website itself is a major problem because all through the years I have been criticizing the website for their fake pollster scorecard, which they banned me from for being better than them and being critical of them. And the major problem with this website is it's preventing the industry from moving forward because everyone's afraid of it. Because if you speak up like me, you'll get banned. If you speak up like me, you'll get a downgraded grade. Like they can't do it to a major university who's getting grants, like for instance, Emerson, right? But now that it's all over, I can just say this out loud. There are pollsters, university pollsters, who aren't left-wing fanatics, and they don't like and never did like Nate Silver, 538, or G. Elliott Morris, because they knew they were getting bad grades for the following: not being inaccurate or not having a high quality product, but precisely the opposite, for being accurate and not reflecting the left-wing consensus. You at 538 as a pollster were penalized not for being wrong, but for not publishing results that mirrored a Democratic bias consensus. So in other words, if everybody said in the national polling consensus that Joe Biden was going to win the popular vote by 9 points, and I come out and I give a poll, my final national poll, which I did, that was Biden plus 4. Biden wins by a little bit over 4, by the way. I was like 0.2 off. Let's say that happens. At 538, I am now labeled as having a Republican bias of 5 points instead of, and I'll be penalized for that on my scorecard, instead of them telling the readers and viewers that I am actually no bias, essentially no bias, and they have a Democratic bias of 5 points. They're measuring you up against the consensus. They're not measuring you up against the actual result. Why do you think they would do that? It is to, whether it's conscious or unconscious, incentivize pollsters to give more Democratic-friendly results. Because the more you go out of that consensus, the more you will be penalized, downgraded, and called a low-quality pollster. Why does that matter? Never really mattered to me. It didn't matter to me. I didn't care if they gave me an F, a D, a C, a ban, which they did. And they did it to Rasmussen too. I never cared a whit about that. Only thing that ever mattered to me was that I was more accurate. But for the Spencer Kimballs of the world, who work at a liberal university and are getting grants to run their show from liberals with, I'm not going to show it, but I got a checkbook right there with the checkbook. That is a problem for your benefactors, for your donors to open up 538 and see, oh my God, Emerson has a date. They want to say, I donate to an A-rated poll. My alma mater has an A-rated poll. But this can only continue forever. I mean, for a certain amount of time. It cannot continue. Excuse me. This can only continue for a finite amount of time. This cannot continue forever. There comes a point where it's not worth the money anymore. And we hit that point. We hit that point. And now, in addition to 538, and holy crap, it's 2:30 already. I got to get through this. That old Patrick Murray that I brought up is now closing and shuttering his doors. This is the end of the Monmouth poll, which they are still referring to in NewJersey.com as a gold standard polling institute. The Monmouth poll, as I responded to this report itself, missed its own state's gubernatorial election by nearly 8 points last cycle. And we have a New Jersey gubernatorial election coming up very soon. it again missed the presidential election. It routinely, I think it did pretty well in Pennsylvania, if I do recall, but everywhere else they were wrong. They gave Hillary Clinton nearly 5 points too much support in the national popular vote back in 2016. They got every single battleground state incorrect. In 2020, excuse me, they also got every single battleground state incorrect. Every single one. And many of them outside the margin. So at some point, and Monmouth is not a highly, highly funded school, for those of you who are not familiar with the area. It's not like a prestigious university like Rutgers. And if you went to Monmouth, I am not at all criticizing you. I lived in Monmouth County for years, and I love Monmouth County. I don't mean it like that. I'm simply telling you there isn't a whole lot of money. Patrick Murray would go on TV because he would want, he was, it says right there, he's the Institute's director since 2005. He went on Megyn Kelly, he went on Fox News, he went on MSNBC, he went on CNN, he went everywhere in an attempt to say, look, I'm your guy. Even if you don't have any connection to this institute, do us a favor and write a check, man, so you can see my polls come out and show your candidates ahead. That's what he's saying when he's doing it. When Nate Silver gives him an A+, even though he has every single failed record election going back since 538 was established, it tells those people you can feel good about giving that money. But it's all coming down now. It's all coming down. And the rest of them that remain standing, like the University of, like the Houston poll that came out today from Texas. That pollster sucks. That pollster failed horrendously at predicting the outcome of their own state's election during the presidential election in 2024. If they understated Trump's support by nearly 10 points in their own state, then why the hell should we give them any attention or credibility whatsoever, benefit of the doubt whatsoever, when they release a poll showing Trump's approval rating underwater? National polls have them above water. Good national polls that actually predict the outcome of elections correctly have Trump still above water. But even those who have him underwater are only underwater by like low single digits. If he's underwater by 2 in the YouGov poll, for crying out loud, how could he be underwater in Texas by 6? So in an effort to try to not allow them to do this consolidation and go along to get along, pretend, we cannot allow them to pretend like everything I just told you is not true, or to pretend like they should be listened to, or give them any credibility whatsoever. So in order to do that, I am basically reaffirming my call to not even renew, but to escalate our level of criticism against these people to the point where we openly ridicule and mock them. We will intellectually dissect them like we have all of these years, but we will also add ridicule. We will see, their kids will see videos of me making fun of their dad who can't poll an election for shit. They will hear me call their dad a sellout. They will hear everything that my kids had to hear when they turned and tried to smear me. They will deal with a level of intellectual bullying that they couldn't even fathom they would get when their loser asses were on the playground back in freaking grade school. If they thought getting picked for kickball last was the tough period of their life, they have nothing to look forward for in their current profession. I will make their high school bully look like a fucking Cub Scout. And that's how it's going to be moving forward. Monmouth University will shutter its gold standing polling institute. Gold standard polling institute. By the way, that's why we picked Big Data Poll and did the branding we did with the gold and everything like that. It's to mock them and their pretentious claim to be a gold standard of anything, not just Monmouth, all of them. That's you damn right I'm taking their kickball away. I'm serious. They better think long and hard about it. Think back to when you sobbed in mommy's arms because you didn't get a spot on kickball in 6th grade. That's going to seem like the best day of your life when I'm finished with you. Monmouth University is planning to imminently shutter its lauded polling institute. Sources with direct knowledge of the matter have told the New Jersey Globe, robbing New Jersey and the nation of one of its premier pollsters. I had to read this to you because this is just freaking laughable. Robbing New Jersey? Excuse me. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Rob New Jersey. New Jersey, what did the Monmouth poll tell you about the state of the race for your last gubernatorial election? Murphy was going to win or was ahead by how many points? Double digits. 11 to 14 points. Jack Citarelli damn near pulled it off. They needed to find ballots in Bergen County at the last minute to keep Murphy from losing the governor's mansion. Everybody knows it. Everyone knows. First time I ever witnessed voter fraud, by the way, guys, was in Asbury Park, New Jersey. That's right. They had African-American communities in Asbury Park, New Jersey, who couldn't give two shits about the election between George Bush and Al Gore, go out and vote for their cousins and their uncles and their brothers and their sisters multiple times because nobody cared, nobody checked. They gave them rides, and they gave them, are you ready? You want to hear about humiliating and degrading and exploitation of downtrodden people? One Newport cigarette. A ride and a Lucy. That's what they called them back in the day. A ride and a Lucy to cast a fraudulent vote in Uncle Clive's name. Murray, a former pollster at the Rutgers University Eagleton poll, left to join Monmouth poll back in 2005. And in the following 20 years, built the university's fledgling polling institute into one of the most well-respected pollsters in the nation. It's got an A+ on 538, guys. It says right there. What are they going to do when they can't make that reference anymore? What are they going to do? I don't really think we need to read the rest of it, but here he is. They just said all that, and in the 4th paragraph, they bring up how Murray, too, had to reckon with his institute's place in New Jersey politics after the last gubernatorial election, which his polling showed was a comfortable victory for Murphy, but which ended up being a nail-biter for Murphy. In the Star Ledger op-ed, he basically questioned the continued utility of horse race polls. That's funny because you can't do it, Patrick. I can. I'm not having a problem with horse race polling, Patrick. You are. And here's why. The industry is collapsing on itself a bit. And this is why they're going to consolidate. Because you had people, ladies and gentlemen, you had people like Patrick Murray. You had people like Dan Malloy at Quinnipiac. Okay? You had people like that other schmuck at the Marist poll who took years, and instead of listening to people like me and Robert Cahaley, who pioneered different ways to poll, different data collection modes, designing things before they were ever even popular or talked about, like online panels or large opt-in surveys, right? We experimented with all of this stuff. Even before there was 10DLC, we were doing peer-to-peer text message at interviews. We were doing text to online options. They made fun of us. They said it wasn't real polling. That's low quality garbage. Only live caller polling is high quality. It's the only trusted thing. By that, they mean that Patrick will then contract out a bunch of live calling interviews for $45 a complete, mostly to people in India who can't speak in English or even give the damn questionnaire in a way that anyone could possibly resemble as English. That's their gold standard. In the case of Monmouth, in fact, they did have a polling institute. I'm not going to say the name unless she's all right with it, but you should now just come out and say it since you know it's true and Patrick's shuttering the doors anyway. He routinely took the data and put his thumb on the scale. Routinely. In fact, that is the exact quote. Patrick puts his thumb on the scale. I got to silence his phone because it won't shut the hell up. He gets the data back and he decides, I think this is too Trumpy. I'm going to wait up for Democrats. I'm going to wait up for liberal ideology. I'm going to wait up for education. Anywho, you should just come out now and just say it because you know it's true. Multiple people over there have seen him do it. And it's always stuff that, like, as a pollster, you can kind of justify. He got caught doing it. And unfortunately, it was the Gateway Pundit who had taken somebody's claim and then put it up in a story about Monmouth poll taking the weighted data that was better, unweighted result that was better for Trump and weighting it and making it better for Clinton. Jesus Christmas, dude. Hold on, guys. This is ridiculous. Silent mode. I actually need that. That's they're attempting to get a hold of me to maintain to conduct maintenance on the generator. That actually is like a must here. Not only that, but the transfer switch is something's messed with it. You definitely do not want it jerry-rigged. But I digress. And because it's a Gateway Pundit, they were able, like Politico did a counter report about it, protecting Patrick Murray, and they basically brought up some, university so-called polling expert who didn't know, who's never conducted a poll in his effing life, by the way. This guy's like one of those like the witness they got to try to counter my testimony in the Kerry Lake trial. We were talking about this in book club yesterday. This guy has never conducted a poll in his life. Like, who the hell? He's not an expert in anything, right? But it's always something where they can make the excuse that really that's the pollster's call. Right. Textbook demographics are not, textbook and your typical demographic variables that you guys know. We go through MarketSite all the time. You know what I'm talking about. That is not really up for debate. You have to make sure gender, or sex. Sorry, we're not doing that gender shit here anymore. Sex. It's not a filthy word. We're all adults here. Sex. Sex, age, race, education has been debated since 2016 ad nauseum, but of course that's acceptable. That's not what Patrick would do. Patrick would do all of that and then wait up for party. And by up, I mean Democrats, his own party. And that's why I've always been an adamant critic, against waiting for party. If you do your job correct, the electorate is going to tell you what it looks like as far as political affiliation, which of course is fluid. Registration is static. More static anyway. It doesn't stay static forever, but it's more static. Identification is fluid. It changes month to month. You can't just decide that you think you know better than the electorate. This is too Democratic. This is too Republican. You can't do that. That is, in fact, as she said, putting your thumb on the scale. All right. It's 2:41. We got to take a break. All right. Let's do that. And then we'll talk more about this. The consolidation part is very clear. YouGov already was in a position to do that. Man, they must feel real slighted. Because out of nowhere, Ipsos, which is more of a globalist entity, and I cannot help but to wonder if with these US AID stuff going on, are they not able, like, do they feel like they need an international panel to insulate themselves from potential issues? I don't know. I think we'll have to learn more about that in order to really understand it. But what we do know is that Reuters uses the Ipsos panel, of course, uses the company Ipsos, and they are one of the worst pollsters in the entire industry. So why ABC would sideline Gary Langer, who conducted the ABC Washington Post poll, the ABC News poll for years. Langer Research has been the one who does the field work for ABC since forever, since as long back as everybody remembers. It was Gary Langer. What was his sin? In 2024, he showed Trump comfortably beating both Harris and Biden. That's his sin. And doing better with young people, and doing better with black people, and doing better with Hispanic people, and doing better with women, and doing better with non or low propensity voters. He got it. Gary saw it. Gary got the entire story of the 2024 election, and he got fired for it. They brought in Ipsos, which sucks, said Gary's overseeing the Ipsos, but there's nothing to oversee. They go to an effing marketplace, they hit collect, and it starts collecting responses, folks. It's not rocket science. They sideline Gary for the Ipsos people. They're all a bunch of left-wing globalist fanatics over there. They get along with Reuters famously. They effed up Brexit. Every Jewish election they ever polled, they understate Likud. Don't you find a pattern going on here? They had Beto O'Rourke beating Ted Cruz in the Senate race in 2018. All right. They are number 2 on the worst pollster of number 3 on the worst pollster of 2020 list. And they sucked famously this year. But they're rallying behind Reuters. They're going to try to use and lean on the Reuters name. Well, Reuters uses Ipsos. That's why we're all doing it. So they're consolidating it now to include the New York Times. The Washington Post sometimes worked with Monmouth too, by the way. That's out. Patrick and the Washington Post had some very creative ways of asking a generic ballot or asking a ballot intention question, which it's not, who do you prefer to control Congress? That's a generic ballot. No, it's not. In the freaking election, in your congressional district for the U.S. House of Representatives, are you voting for the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate? That's a generic ballot. Let's take a break, shall we? Speaking of untrustworthy people, the medical field. Beware of people in white lab coats. Let's take a break and we'll be back. And we'll look at more of this, by the way. Can I get rid of that stupid mama thing now? We're done, right? We don't have to listen. Oh, he's such a tool, too. There it is, actually. Murray apologizes for inaccurate Monmouth polling. You want to know what kind of person you're dealing with here, folks? Let me ask you a question. Never trust a guy in a white lab coat. And would you ever trust this guy? Would you trust a dude like that? Is it me? Or does this look more like a guy who's going to stand on the corner of a school? Like, he's going to stand on the first corner outside of the school zone with a Snickers bar and a van with blacked out windows 20 feet away before he looks like a guy I can trust to give me accurate polling or to know the working class man. All right? Oh, kiss my ass. I don't care if anybody's offended. Kiss my ass. I'm so sick of these people. They get no respect. Let's call it how we see it. Looks like a guy who's shooting estrogen in his ass twice a day. Borderline not even a dude. I'm sorry, maybe horse race polling just isn't valuable anymore. Not from Monmouth University, it's not. Where were we? That's right. We were taking a break. All right, here we go. Look, folks, hospitals and schools are on high alert. Health officials are pushing fear again. That's all they got. Measles cases are surging, and talks of mandates are creeping back. But real protection doesn't come from government orders, it starts with you. Here's what they don't tell you: a strong immune system is the best defense. That's why the wellness company's elderberry gummies are packed with antioxidants, vitamin C, and zinc to help keep your little ones healthy and resilient. But if pneumonia or an ear infection occurs, being prepared is everything. Kids Medical Kit comes stocked with chewable amoxicillin, and 5 other essential medications. So you're not scrambling if things take a turn. For adults, Dr. Peter McCullough recommends the Wellness Company's Natural Immunity Blend to keep the immune system ready for battle. If a more serious complication arises, the Medical Emergency Kit provides critical medications for early intervention. Make long, expensive hospital visits a waste or a last resort. Don't get caught off guard. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form, and within 1 to 2 weeks, your kit arrives at your door. Get prepared now by heading to twc.health/TPP. It's in the description, by the way. Use that code TPP to save yourself up to $30 off, and you will get free shipping. All right. If the audience is another 10, if I remember correctly. So again, for those of you who don't know elderberry, Laura introduced me to that many years ago. I love elderberry. This year was the first year I got the flu, and I cannot remember when. And it was just because, with the little ones, they're like little petri dishes, and I couldn't stand the little guy being sick. So I let him sleep in bed with daddy the whole time he was sick. And I let him rub his boogers on my shoulder, and when he got nauseous, I had to clean it up. It's like, and I guess that was like always the case. But also, I've had my own things going on. I'm not eating like as much as you should. So it probably knocked my immune system down. So I got it for the first time in 20 years. But it is peace of mind. And those chewable elderberry, right now, before I got the wellness companies, I had this drink that tried to make the elderberry taste like sweeter. I don't care. I like it, period. She gets me adult male elderberry ones. And now that this is out, obviously we got this. So it's good. Chewable amoxicillin for the kids. What? You ever get for your kids, the doctor prescribes that bubblegum crap? You got to shake it up. Once you open it up, it's got to go back in the refrigerator, or it's got to go in the refrigerator. No matter how much they try to make that crap taste like bubblegum, folks, that's disgusting. I've tried. I was like, how bad is this, Roro? We're making a big, give me a pill. No, thank you. What do we got here? Complaints? Do we have complaints here? We have personal complaints. That's funny. I got your text, Yod. That's funny. Are we personally complaining? Did I go too far? Far that. Okay? Take it that far. Right up you. All right. I did want to do a little bit of a roundup over the weekend. Obviously, all this is on Real Clear Politics. I did want to play something. I don't know that I have the time to do it because it's going to take a while. We could listen to some of it while I get the other thing going anyway. But before we do, let's take a real quick other word from our sponsor, and then we'll come back and we'll listen to it because I'd like to dip in on him once in a while. I'm going to go back and forth between like 3 Democrats that I think are sane, number one, but also I think that they're also right. All right. And I've given a lot of two-way stuff. Dan, he's fantastic. And I've given him a lot of airtime because I think his takes are correct. But I want to bring in some other voices who I also think are on the right topic. And he's speaking to what I was trying to explain to you before, which is that Democrats are kind of like, I don't think Trump's communications are doing well enough. I told you what I think he needs to have. He needs to have someone who does truly understand not just the base, but the entire coalition that got him elected. He needs to have somebody do, and like 30 minutes a day. It's not too much to ask for the president. 30 minutes a day. Everybody else gets the out of the Oval Office and he sits down with this person, whether it's a guy or a girl, whatever. He sits down with this person and he explains to him how what is going on that day and with that agenda, it's going to be perceived by the American public as his coalition specifically, and how the media is going to try to impact that. And then from there, they need to figure out what to do with it. And the reason why I say it has to go through to the president, the White House is an employer. And even when you're talking about White House communications, the press secretary's office, etc., Sean Spicer will tell you this. If you talk to Sean Spicer, he'll tell you flat out. In a Trump White House, you take direction from the president, and then the White House press secretary disseminates the message. In between all of that, you're going to have all of these permanent employees at the White House who are trying to f that message up. They're trying to dilute it. They're trying to leak it to the media, give them heads up, trying to figure out what to do with it and how to counter it. And the truth is, a lot of them were kind of like amateurs. And Sean will tell you, he wasn't prepared for it. And they were able to do it. I don't want to see Caroline fall into that same trap. Why? It doesn't matter if I support or not support the president. I want the people to understand. And I want the people to get the not diluted, undiluted message from the president about what he or she is doing at that time. That is necessary. This is a self-governing society. I don't want Mika Brzezinski to be the filter. I don't want the New York Post to be the filter. I don't want the Washington Post to be the filter. The Times, Fox News, MSNBC, any of them. That's why Roosevelt was brilliant with his fireside chats, by the way. Absolutely brilliant. And that's something that, Larry Schweikert and I have talked about this. Trump is the perfect president to bring back in a more obviously modern version of fireside chat. But it wouldn't matter unless he had that person he could trust who really does understand this, because he does himself. He's very good. His political instincts are very good, but he is the president now. And he's not a campaigner. He's not a candidate. So he's not sitting around and trying to figure out, how do I get this message to people? He's trying to figure out how to govern. It's a different job now. And they have to adapt and evolve to reflect that reality. Okay. Let's take a real quick break again, though. From our friends at Freedom Gold, as always, if you're thinking about, especially towards the end of the tax year, right? If you're thinking about wealth protection or diversifying your portfolio, maybe you're looking at your taxes and you're like, got a little extra. What am I going to do with it? And you're talking about currency or anything, precious gold, metals, any of it. The folks at Freedom Gold are definitely the people to call. All right. No hard sell. They have shared philosophy with us over here. We want to make sure that you have all the information that you need to make a decision and that you're confident in doing so. Also, a lot of these other houses out there have ridiculous buy-in fees, 50 grand, 20 grand, 10, even at Freedom Gold. They have one as well, but they dropped that all the way to essentially nothing in this industry, which is like $500 just to get you started. And by the way, if you open a new gold or silver IRA, you get a $500 credit towards it for free. It's free silver, basically. I mean, it's an incredible deal. Now, no matter what deal you qualify for, which you should go check out, which one you do qualify for at freedomgoldusa.com/rich. No matter which one you do, you'll be thrown into a prize pool and someone will win free silver every month. And apparently it is 2 now every month. You guys know who you are, who have won. Congratulations. That's fantastic. But also, no matter what you get started at, you will get free shipping and insurance on all orders. There's like so much good going on here. Like I said, there's no hard sell. Give the guys a call over there. We've had them on the show before. You know them. They're good guys. At 888-279-3592. 888-279-3592. Now, that is our number specifically, but it is always cool when it's like, hey, I was watching the People's Pundit. He sent me. All right. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Freedom Gold, the wellness company, Brickhouse Nutrition, right? You know how much I love my field of greens. It's all in the description below. You guys can go and take advantage of it. By the way, as is the public polling project, which I know we're in the off cycle here, but do what you can. And of course, share it. That's enormously helpful. The more of a base of contributors we have, the less burden it falls on the same people who fund and support it all the time. All right. By the way, we'll get into it. It's a conversation we'll have at some point. But we've got to figure out what we're going to do with it. To make sure it's sustainable at some point in the long term. Everything's got to change. Everything's got to make sure you're constantly looking at it, making sure it's successful. All right. What did I want to do here? Right. a voice of a non-crazy Democrat. Whoa, that was loud. All right, I want to make sure that we don't listen to a whole bunch of BS in the beginning. I think my minute mark is correct, but bear with me here and let me just double check. It's an audio because it's Katz and Cosby, which is John Catsimatidis. Sorry, he's Greek. And Rita Cosby. And Mark Penn's on this, and he's talking about his take, like Mark Solomon asked me, with Democrats and their messaging in response to Trump. And this matters as context of our show here, because it's like, this is one of the guys, not only is he sane Democrat, but this is one of the guys who does do a good job polling. All right. So when Mark Penn or when Mark Mitchell or when Robert Cahaley or when Rich Barris, right, when we say something about what we think we see in the numbers, no offense, but it matters a lot more than what freaking Harry Enton thinks he sees going on, right? Like, these people are all clueless. Harry Enton's not even a pollster, but all these other pollsters out there and the headlines every time CNN publishes something or Vox publishes something, like, they're not good pollsters. So who gives a shit about their opinions, right? They can't. If a pollster cannot convey the opinion of the public accurately, then who gives a shit about their opinion? Should be a t-shirt, right? You don't get it. Pollster who can't gauge public opinion doesn't get an opinion. Something like that. What do you think, guys? What do you think? All right, let's put it up. And I don't want to go on and on and on here, but let's figure
addressed to a joint session of Congress last night. 1 hour, 40 minutes, the longest in modern history. But I thought it was a good one. Didn't you, Rudy? I thought it was great.
I had some popcorn, and I was sitting on the edge of the chair the whole time.
It was riveting. It definitely was one for the record books. And joining us now to talk about all of this is the great Democratic strategist, Mark Penn. Mark, we haven't talked to you in a while. What did you think of the way the Democrats acted last night?
Infantile? I mean, it was, look, it was on the floor. It was really silly what they did. They really should show the maximum respect and decorum, particularly if they're trying to complain that they don't think that President Trump has enough decorum. Then they should show respect. And also, they failed to applaud at things that they should have applauded for. And the Democrats normally would have been very careful to make sure that when young cancer survivors were being highlighted, that of course they would recognize, that kind of battle. Now, I thought Senator Slotkin's response, however, not that anybody would have heard it, that was a good response. I mean, it's very difficult to do. Nobody listens to it. That was an entirely reasonable response. I thought she did herself some good.
Yeah, Mark, I was telling Rita, I was listening to her the first 3-4 minutes. I'm like, wow, we ought to recruit her for the Republican Party. But then all of a sudden, she just went off the rails with craziness. But I was impressed with her. I was impressed with her as a leader for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's her job to poke holes in the Trump argument, and I think that she presented a counter case. And that was her job, and she did it, and responsibly, and not ridiculously, or anything like that. But she was way overshadowed by what happened on the floor, and a Democratic member having to be carried out, and these little cutesy signs and so forth.
Go ahead, Judge Weinberg.
Mark, I think your point is the same point that Britt Hume of Fox made, which is it's a thankless job to have to do the rebuttal, and nobody pays attention to it anyway.
I almost fell asleep.
You know what, Mark? I just want to say one thing. To me,
that's probably good enough. I mean, that's GG. Yeah, GG. That's good. Yeah, it's enough, right? The bottom line is the response is always difficult to give to the president, but the response was actually good, and it was actually right. So taking the behavior of the Democrats out of the equation leaves you with just that. A good speech, longest ever, for a joint session, I would have kept it to like 45 minutes, and I would have started with immigration, which I would have then pivoted in. We handled immigration like we said we would. We will handle the economy. He messed a lot of things up, which he did say, which was good, right? And then you have to maybe even throw a joke about Zelensky in there when you get talking about the war and everything that's going on there. But I would have spent a lot more time talking about I would have been a lot more forthcoming and a lot more dire about the situation, bridging the economic picture with the effort at Doge to shrink government and to end what is the raping and pillaging of a superpower by a ruling class who doesn't care about the people anymore. This is every time a great power collapses. This is what the ruling class attempts to do on the way out. So for years, you have been hearing people, like on the right especially, say that, that they're managing the decline. This is managed decline. It's true, but it's not the full picture. And I know it's 3:02 and I know I'm over, but I want to play some. We don't even have to play it, but I'm just saying I typically will throw you guys these little bit of hints on locals. I did one before about like, why do we even care about what these people say, right? And then also on X or something like that, I'll say something. You got these people like Rick Wilson are wigging out because, of course, they have clients who are losing money from the USAID scam being shut down, right? And that's what they're wigging out about. That is the collection of parochial interests we were talking about, attempting to push back and attempting to stop the course correction, because it doesn't really matter to them what happens. The national interest doesn't matter to them. For the most part, a lot of times these ruling class, and they are like oligarchs, they survive the downfall. They restructure and survive the downfall, like the Russians did when the Soviet Union collapsed. Most of those oligarchs survived the downfall. The military men who were once the heroes of the damn, the Union, they did not. But there's always casualties. But these big guys and these guys who are in the political sphere that help the big guys, they try to not only weather the storm and navigate the rough seas, but they try to pillage and rape on the way down to make sure they have as much as possible when it happens. And it's sad, but that is the way of things. And he did not spend enough time explaining to the American people in the way they can understand it, that is what is going on here. While you work hard, while you still get up every day, while you still try to raise your children, while you still try to keep the lights on, while you still try to keep a roof over your head, they're literally raping and pillaging your future and your children's future and your grandchildren's future. And they think they'll just shut the gate, lock you out, and weather the storm. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. All the links to all our sponsors, of course, like I said below, are in the description. Support them like you support us. That's how we support the show, and that makes the world go around, right? What else? I thought I did have something else here. Stay tuned. Going to do it early. Maybe Thursday, I think. I'll check with Laura. All right. But stay tuned for that. That should be a lot of fun, as always. I got to figure out how to get this on audio and send it to you. But when we were talking, Mark Mitchell and I last Tuesday, somebody had heard me talk about this. Like, man, we're in the polling ghetto, the conservative polling ghetto, right? Like they try to put us in. And I had said, that Biggie Tupac remix thing, that somebody should come up with that or show me how to come up with that, where we can have that song twisted into it. And instead, somebody just said, look, I'm just going to make my own. And he did. And he sent it to me, and it's really good. All right. So I want to get the audio file itself and share it with you. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be neat. All right. See you tomorrow, as always. Don't forget to sign up to Locals. All right. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. If you intend to come, it's not that you have to buy it. And look, this is like a book everyone in academia who's going to study this field is going to read. So it's pricey because they sell it to students for like 5 to 10. They sell student books like this 5 to 10 times the value they are. But it is a collection of works about nationalism, the study of nationalism, its origins, right? Whether it's even real or not, right? What its values, why do we do this, right? All of this, I get into it. But Vincent Pecora had put together a collection of those over the years, from Fichte and Maistre to Rousseau and Montesquieu. And there's just a load of good stuff in there before we get to the more modern people, especially those who are on the left, who hate the concept of nationalism. And it's not because they think it's dangerous or ethnocentric or anything. They don't like it because nationalism is a powerful force and appears to be stronger than their ideology. And they cannot have their one world kumbaya shit and sing along if they cannot break through the concept of the liberal nation state. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but you don't have to buy it because it is very expensive. Of course, it will help you if you do, but the book is Nations and Identities. We will read it aloud and discuss it anyway. We are doing John Stuart Mill this week. Very important. We cut it short because Mill is so important that we just couldn't get through Gobineau and decide that we're just going to read through Mill. We're going to blast through. We can't do that. And for those of you who don't know, Gobineau is, this is he's a racist, he's a racist. But his main contribution was a certain theory about why the diluting of national identities is destructive to nations. That's fine. And we all, as we had a difficult conversation, we all recognize that. We recognize it in America. The Europeans recognize it. The Japanese do. It's why they limit certain immigrants into their country, right? There's a very limited number of people from Islamic countries they want in. They're trying to preserve their culture. However, Gobineau goes into other areas, which we didn't read that. We, of course, touched on what he was going to argue. We all know from the passage where he's going with it, but he wants to get the audience of the new age of reason scientists, right? People who are studying biology, people who are putting aside things like natural law in the spiritual form or in the more logical sense. And he wants to appeal because he wants things to go back the way they were. He's a French nobleman. He wants things to go back the way they were. So he's trying to get these people on their side. So he argues, the real answer is here with scientists. And some races are just less valuable and incapable than others. It's in their genes. And it's dumb. Okay? But again, when we study these things, we understand what's going on with our own world right now with much greater clarity, in a much more sophisticated way than the nonsense talking head BS you hear on TV, or you read in op-ed columns, or you hear out of senators' mouths who don't read books, apparently. Things like that. All right. All right. Again, don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. Going to get my little one at the bus stop. Number love for you. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and don't work too hard. Work hard because I'm a believer in the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, baby. Frugality with a calling. God wants you to prosper. But obviously, don't forget to appreciate the world around you. All right, guys. All the best. I'll see you soon.